USS Lexington was a mighty aircraft carrier from the U.S. Navy that helped turn the tide of the naval war against the Japanese Empire during World War II. One of the largest and fastest ships of its day, it was initially designed as a battle cruiser, but it was then reclassified and affectionately nicknamed Lady Lex. After the unexpected attack on Pearl Harbor, Lexington was sent to the Coral Sea to halt the Japanese advances in the area. The ensuing Battle of the Coral Sea in May of 1942 would become the first carrier battle in history in which the opposing forces never came within sight of each other. Still, the Americans inflicted so much damage upon the Japanese fleet that they would not be able to stand up to them in the forthcoming Battle of Midway. Lexington's sacrifice would prove a watershed moment in naval history. p.m., and around 2,770 surviving crew members were evacuated. Over 200 men had lost their lives, but no wounded men were left behind.
How y'all folks doing this fine day? It's Gator here at the cable company. I'm so glad you stopped in to see me today. Today we're going over the USS Lexington CV-2. Okay, the president at the time was Calvin Coolidge. He was 23 to 1929, and the ship was commissioned on December the 14th, 1927. So let's don't waste any time. There he is, Calvin Coolidge, right there. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Lexington CV-2, leaving San Diego, California, USA on October the 14th, 1941. Lexington on slipway 1925. Lexington beginning the transit from her boat builder at Quincy to Boston Navy Yard in 1928. Curtiss F-6C fighters and Martin T-3M torpedo bombers, 1928. Lexington's ship's insignia was adapted from the sculpture by Henry Hudson Kitson. Lexington topped at Puget Sound Navy Yard alongside Saratoga and Langley in 1929. Lexington, a smokescreen off Panama, February 1929. A Mitsubishi G4M torpedo bomber photographed from Lexington flight deck on the 20th of February 1942. Lexington in the early morning of 8 May 1942, prior to launching her aircraft during the Battle of Coral Sea. View of the flight deck of Lexington about 15 May. The ship air group is spotted aft with Wildcat. Lexington abandoned and burning several hours after being damaged by Japanese airstrikes. Bronze Service Star. The ribbon of the American Defense Service Medal awarded by the United States Department of Defense.
Coral Sea. Japanese forces invaded Tulagi on May 3rd, as British and Australian troops had already evacuated the island before the enemy got there. But the next day, the Americans caught the invaders by surprise with a full-on aircraft carrier task force attack, destroying several Japanese ships and aircraft. Still, the damage wasn't enough to hinder the Japanese from building a seaplane base on the island. Meanwhile, Yorktown and Lexington sailed west to the Jamard Passage near Port Moresby to face Japan's combined fleet, but they couldn't find them as the enemy was miles away surrounding the Solomons. Both fleets stalked each other for 2 days, with poor weather conditions leading to several mistakes and missed opportunities. On May 7th, Japanese aircraft spotted the USS Neosho Oiler and the USS Sims destroyer and mistook them as carriers. Their strikes sank the destroyer and heavily damaged the fleet oiler. Meanwhile, Lexington's air group launched bombs and torpedoes against the Japanese light carrier Shoho, believing it to be a fleet carrier. The Japanese ship was sunk a short distance from Mishima Island. The next morning, both fleets were unsuspectedly close, and engagement became inevitable. The American Dauntlesses and Devastators scored first against the Japanese carriers. Zuikaku managed to hide under the clouds, but Shokaku was out in the open. Lieutenant John J. Powers, piloting one of the bombers, had vowed, quote, to get a hit if I have to lay it on their flight deck. And he fulfilled that promise. Powers dropped one of 3 bombs that forced Chicago to withdraw, but he was caught up in the explosion. He would eventually be awarded a posthumous Medal of Honor. Meanwhile, a Japanese raid of 69 aircraft was detected by Lexington radars. The Navy immediately sent 9 Wildcats to intercept them, but they were flying too low and saw the Japanese aircraft pass them over. A coordinated strike from the Japanese torpedo and bombing squadrons ultimately proved tactically superior to the Americans, and the vast majority of their aircraft concentrated on Lexington. The American carrier dodged the attacks for a while, but it was eventually hit on its port side by 2 torpedoes. 2 divers also scored hits against the vessel, but they caused minor damage. The damaged carrier could still conduct flight operations and keep moving at 24 knots. Lexington kept sending and receiving aircraft when an explosion triggered by sparks that ignited gasoline vapors briefly halted operations. Another blast 2 hours later wrecked the water pressure and steering control systems. And a series of explosions in the following hours finally put a final blow on the colossal carrier. Captain Sherman reluctantly ordered to abandon ship at 5:07 p.m., and around 2,770 surviving crew members were evacuated. Over 200 men had lost their lives, but no wounded men were left behind. Legacy. The task force then regrouped and withdrew to the south. Lexington was scuttled to prevent exposing it to the enemy, and between 7:15 and 7:52 p.m., 5 torpedoes from the destroyer Phelps sank the ship for good. An officer exclaimed, quote, "There she goes. She didn't turn over. She's going down with her head up. Dear old Lex, a lady to the last."
States. Lexington. Battle of Lexington. Namesake. It was 1916 as a battle cruiser. 1922 as an aircraft carrier. Builder was Four River Shipbuilding Company, Quincy, Massachusetts. It was laid down the 8th of January 1921, launched the 3rd of October 1925, commissioned the 14th December 1927, classified as aircraft carrier the 1st of July 1922, stricken the 24th of June 1942, certification hull number CC-1, then CV-2. The nicknames is Lady Lex and Gray Lady. She scuttled after the Battle of the Coral Sea on the May 8th of 1942. Shipwreck was found on March 4th, 2018 by billionaire co-founder of Microsoft, Paul Allen.
2 miles beneath the surface of the Coral Sea, this is the USS Lexington. It's the first time she's been seen in 76 years.
And you can see the rifling still in the barrel of the gun.
And there, one of the nameplates of the Lexington. The aircraft carrier is remarkably well preserved, but this serenity is deceptive. 216 men lost their lives as she was attacked before the commander ordered abandon ship, saving hundreds more. Admiral Sherman paid tribute to his men.
Their conduct was magnificent. It makes you proud to be an American, to see the way these boys perform.
On this discovery, the head of US Pacific Command said, "As the son of a survivor of the USS Lexington, I offer my congratulations to Paul Allen and the expedition crew of research vessel Petrel for locating the Lady Lex." This is the Petrel, and the man with the ambition and the money is Microsoft billionaire Paul Allen. The Coral Sea is between Australia and the Solomon Islands. It was here the US Navy engaged with the Japanese. The largest ship to sink was the crippled USS Lexington. Officers decided to scuttle her to prevent her capture. More than 2,700 men were successfully evacuated. The Battle of the Coral Sea is considered a crucial moment in checking enemy advances, and so this discovery is being welcomed by maritime historians.
There's obviously the pang. You're very much aware of the human loss, the terrible things that ship and her crew went through in the middle of a terrible battle where both sides suffered quite badly. It's a complex mix of emotions to look upon the remains of that ship and be aware that you're not only staring at an important relic of naval architecture, but also a monument to human courage.
The Lexington is a war grave. There will be no retrieval operation. Simply locating Lady Lex is reward enough. Simon Viger, 5 News.
Thank you so much for coming in to seeing me today. What a pleasure it is to put these ships together for you. I'm glad you stopped in to see me. If you like this kind of content, hit that like button. Show me that you do, okay? Leave a comment. so I can comment back to you. I like to say hi to everybody. So come on and see me. Join me Sunday live. We play a little game of hangman, and we have a lot of fun doing it when we learn about America. Come on back and see me, okay? Bye-bye.